Hi, everybody. Welcome to Evolve, where we focus on the evolution of leadership. I'm Kim Ford, your host, and today I'm really excited to have a special guest. Could you please introduce yourself and your business?
Absolutely, Kim. Thank you first so much for the opportunity to be here and address your audience, talk to you. I'm Paul Glover, the No BS Workplace Legacy Coach. I also, just so everyone knows the background that goes into this, I'm a recovering lawyer. I was a practicing trial attorney, and I'm also an ex-felon. When I speak about the topic we're going to talk about, blind spots, I come up with my conversation about this through my own personal experience, hard won, by the way. My coaching program is all about legacy. And those people who are interested in creating a work legacy, those leaders, and I get along pretty well. But I also tell you that, and I tell my clients, there has to be a certain level of commitment to create legacy. And if you're not willing to make that commitment and do the hard work, it's not going to work well. One of my clients refers to me as a Sherpa. He said, Paul will help you get up the mountain, but he's not going to carry your pack. So that's the conversations that I have with my clients. And it's always interesting to speak to someone else who operates in the same area because it's a learning experience for me.
Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned, at least, looking back at your history and your bio, is you refer to something called personal blind spots. Do you mind going in depth a little bit about what that is and what, maybe leaders can do in regard to that?
Oh, absolutely. First, I truly believe that everyone has their blind spots. And by the way, they're called blind spots for a reason. We're not even aware that they're there. They are there as a part of our personality and also our personal experience, our upbringing, and they exist. And unfortunately, when they are triggered, they will generate behavior, most of the time bad behavior. I think that every leader has them, and most are not aware of them unless, in fact, they are pointed out. By the way, everybody else can see our blind spots. They've got their own, but they absolutely can see ours. And since leaders are constantly under the spotlight of performance, there are everyone around them who follows them is aware of those blind spots. Unfortunately, blind spots lead to manipulation. If you've got someone who's attempting to convince you to do something you don't want to do, they may very well trigger that blind spot. And the reality is we all have triggers, and those triggers absolutely are adjusted to our behavior and then cause us to do a knee-jerk reaction. People, especially with words, if you know how your leader responds to certain words, you will use those in the conversations that you have with them to trigger a knee-jerk reaction from them, either positive or negative. So yes, I truly believe that. I went to prison based on the fact that I had blind spots. And I dealt with those only after I was in prison, by the way. I'm a slow learner. It took me about 2 years to realize that I needed to change who I was, or I was going to go back to prison after I got out. And so some of those blind spots that I had to deal with was first ego. As a trial attorney, you have a tremendously large ego. Goes with the territory. Otherwise, you would not be engaged in that pursuit. It would not be what you did with your law degree. Yeah. As I tell people, trial lawyers are the closest thing to hand-to-hand combat that's still permitted by law. We actually have a judge that makes sure we don't go too far. Yep. The reality is that you're putting yourself out there as a performer, as a storyteller. You have a client that you're representing, and you are the face of that client with the jury. And so with the jury, you have to make an emotional and a critical thinking connection, and then you take them on the journey. But back to the blind spots. So mine were ego, the need to belong, and the need for approval. And I address that when I do my keynotes on the fact that I had a very broken childhood. My mother and father married each other twice. Still couldn't stand each other, by the way. They divorced each other twice too. So
that's great.
I carry that baggage with me, and it was my blind spots, and I associated with people who recognized my blind spots and took advantage of them. And by the way, that's not saying I do not have or did not have responsibility for my behavior.
Sure.
Absolutely, we still need to know that we're in control of ourselves, but the blind spots are where we need to exert control. Once we know what they are, once we know what the triggers are, then we can start to exert control. Unfortunately, most leaders never find out what they are, except through the type of experience that I had. Not that they go to prison, but they suffer a failure
Right.
based on their behavior, based on that blind spot. I found that I actually do a presentation called Every Leader Needs a Fool. The fool is the gesture that's set at the foot of the king in medieval times. Everyone thinks that they were an entertainer. They weren't. Because the king had been anointed by divine right, if you challenged the king, you committed heresy, which was punishable by death. The fool was looked at as someone who was insane because of their dress or the way they acted. Insane people were exempt from that rule of committing heresy.
Yeah.
The fool actually existed as a trusted advisor who was able to tell the king, because they had psychological safety, when they were making a mistake. Every leader needs a fool. They need someone that has the psychological safety to tell them when they're making a mistake. Most leaders don't have that because they don't provide the psychological safety.
Yeah, that's so true. And you mentioned self-destructive behaviors. Tell me how that and can affect a leader.
Oh, well, it's interesting to me how often leaders make mistakes and don't accept responsibility for the mistake because of that self-destructive behavior. They let that ego, they let hubris, they let the need to succeed. Leaders are extraordinarily afraid of failure, to the extent where they won't even admit they have a weakness. And the reality of that infallible leader is it will lead you down that road to self-destructive behavior. Because if you believe you're right, and I think we're looking at obviously a person right now, Putin, who absolutely is fulfilling his own self-destructive behavior.
Absolutely.
And he has not listened to, nor will he listen to anyone else. He's made a decision, and he's going to be the strong man, whether he is capable of fulfilling that or not. Another one that comes to mind is Saddam Hussein. Mm-hmm. Saddam Hussein allowed his country to be destroyed and himself executed rather than admit he didn't have weapons of mass destruction. I know that those are extreme examples, but we can look at them every day with leaders who do behavior that is absolutely astoundingly poor and lead them to their ultimate failure, being removed, perhaps even being put in prison. It's within our control as human beings, but we first have to be self-aware. Leaders are seldom self-aware unless they're forced to do so.
So true. And I think one of the biggest issues that leaders have, especially right now, is their communication style. So, two things here. One, how communication styles affect leadership, but think of the change. We have people now that aren't necessarily in the office sitting there. So more than ever, we have people that are hybrid and remote. Communication styles affecting everything. So if you don't mind, give us some thoughts on that.
Well, first, you're absolutely right. But I also believe that this isn't as difficult as we make it out to be. It takes more effort, by the way.
Absolutely.
I don't think the rules of communication change, but I would suggest that there's two improvements to communication style that every leader needs to look at. First, active listening doesn't make it anymore. Empathetic listening does.
Yes.
And that is a move to the next level of developing a relationship that is now going to be a part of what every leader needs to do. When coming up in my business, the only way that you were supposed to communicate with another employee was professionally.
Yeah.
That doesn't work anymore. It is absolutely essential that you establish a personal aspect to the communication process. Employees need the professionalism to set the boundaries, but they need the personal to know that you care about them.
Right.
And that has become more and more important because of the pandemic, obviously. So that personal well-being can't be established with normal communication, traditional communication.
Sure.
So being an empathetic listener is absolutely huge. And by the way, I'm a terrible listener. I would rather talk than listen. I think that most leaders are that way. They think I've got a message and I'm going to say the message over and over again, but I'm not going to allow the feedback, the listening to take place. So empathetic listening is the first element that has to be a part of the new communication process. The other one is you need to be perpetually curious.
Mm-hmm.
It is extraordinarily necessary to be curious about everyone around you. It's required as a part of the communication process. You not ask how you're doing, you also have to ask how are you feeling.
Yep.
And that's a step in that personal direction that develops a relationship that's required now for engaged employees. Yep. Because we've been abysmal about engagement. Gallup for 20 years has continually showed that how bad our level of engagement is as leaders with employees. That has to change. Yeah. It cannot continue. Otherwise, what do you get? Well, you get the great resignation.
Right.
They're not staying anymore. And I tell all my leaders, employees are mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore. And no one likes to hear that, but it's the absolute truth. Second, you cannot buy engagement. It's not for sale.
Right.
Discretionary effort is exactly that. It's discretionary. Someone wants to give you that effort. They will not give it to you for money. They will give you exactly what you ask from them, and then they'll stop. Mm-hmm. So what we're looking for is discretionary effort. And once we look at how we get that, it's about increasing engagement through developing the relationships necessary to get that engagement voluntarily. I'm a research geek, and the one research item that Gallup does that shocked me a couple of years ago was they did the employee engagement survey, but they did it for managers. Managers have the same low level of engagement as employees.
Right.
It's crazy to me. And so if that low level of engagement, that only 36% of managers are engaged, and they are the model for the team, why would you expect different behavior from your team?
Right. Yeah.
Well, of course, it seems like a no-brainer, and yet leaders seem to want to ignore that and think, if I give you another $1, will you stay? Well, yeah, I'll stay, but I'm not going to be any more engaged.
Right. It's a lot easier to throw money at somebody than to actually work hard to engage them. And do you have any suggestions or ideas or even examples on how you would engage somebody when they're remote? I can think of a lot of ways when somebody's sitting in front of you where you try to find some way to relate to them. And then you have this commonality where you have this, okay, wow, now we can talk about something that we both relate to. I think it's a lot harder when, there's a lot of companies. I was just talking to a managing partner at a law firm, and they said they haven't even met their associates. It's been 2 years. And they just met for the first time on March 1st. And that's amazing. Like, how have you kept them engaged? And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts.
Well, first, I think that we always think that we can engage people through work.
Right.
That's only one aspect of this relationship. Now, once again, we're back to the professional and the personal that has to combine in the communication process. So one of the things, of course, is first, you need to convince people you care enough about their well-being, and you do that as a part of the communication process. For instance, we don't say thank you enough. Okay. It's extraordinary to me that gratitude is shown to be one of those things that enhance engagement. And at the end of a work week, a terrible work week, and here it is Friday, and you know what we say? We'll see you on Monday. That's like an invitation back to hell.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's hell. Yeah.
It's not. How about if we actually say, I appreciate what you've done through this week. And by the way, not only am I going to tell you I appreciate you, but I'm going to show you. For instance, when we think about people who are working remotely in their homes, how about if we make sure that they've got the proper equipment? How about if we make sure they have a desk and a chair and a light and a camera? Yeah. Exactly. But by the way, now I've started a personal relationship with you because you've told me what you need, and I'm going to provide that. Second, I think that clearly you have to go through the effort of a more frequent communication. I think every Monday you start off, every Friday at the end, and then Wednesday you check in. The concept of saying, hey, not only what are you doing, but how are you doing 3 times a week to me is that frequency and a change of the message. Then I also think that there's opportunities to do the fun stuff. We don't celebrate. Oh my God, God forbid that when we accomplish a goal, we actually take a breath and say, let's have a party.
Yeah.
I love parties. I say when you have a goal, then you need to have cake.
Yeah. Oh, I'll take the cake.
Exactly.
I love
And
cake,
by the way,
so.
send them cake. Send them cake. Give
Yeah.
them a gift card. Take your family out for a dinner this weekend because I appreciate you and we've accomplished our goals. So to me, again, it's all about changing the nature of the communication, but also maintaining a frequency that we're not used to.
Right.
And interestingly enough, the research once again shows that 70% of all managers and leaders' duties are administrative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell you that that's not taking care of people. That's taking care of the organization's requirements for process. How about if we actually say 70% of my job should be taking care of our people? What does that mean to them? And let me start to communicate we're doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Frequency, listen, I send out a daily pause point of the day, every day, 6 days a week. Who reads it? I don't care. If that's not my obligation. My obligation is to tell you I care enough about you to send you something that I think you would find beneficial. And it keeps a relationship going on a daily basis. And when leaders tell me they don't have time for that, I tell them they don't know what their job is.
Right. That's true. That's true.
And I wish I could tell you that there's something else you can do, but if you can't be in front of them physically, you still need to be in front of them remotely.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. A couple months ago over the holidays, I was sitting with a client and they were trying to figure out what to do because they had a lot of their staff was still concerned with COVID and they had their holiday party coming up. And it was, and I suggested, you know what, why don't you make it optional? Come to the holiday party, but don't tell them. But the people that actually don't come to the holiday party, send them the gift card so that they can enjoy the holiday on their own. And he loved that idea. And I said, it's really important that they feel like they're part of the team as well. Even if they're not comfortable being with the team, they should have that event. And he did it. It was, the perfect kind of what I thought, middle ground. And I think we all have to find that now more than ever, right? To keep the people and to keep, everybody happy in many ways and try to engage them.
You first spot on and good thing you did. You recommended that. Good thing that he did it. But for leaders who keep telling me how difficult this is how we are communicating like this.
Yeah.
We are having an engaged, meaningful conversation. I can feel the energy. I'm engaged with this. Now, if you and I can do this, are you telling me that the leader of an organization can't?
It's so
true. They can. How
Yeah.
about if you just get it? Stop saying I have to see them in person. By the way, I find that I love doing conversations in person. Who doesn't?
Of course.
That's not where we are right now. So instead of continuing to battle this, let's adapt to it because it's not going to go away. 40% of all jobs can be done remotely. Accept it. First, employees want remote work.
Yeah, they do. They want the option.
Well, yeah. And so when you say, well, we're not going to do that, or by the way, if you work remotely, you're not part of our team. And, I'm going to actually show you that. No. And this concept about people who work 5 days a week are going to receive more opportunity for advancement. You got to dispel those rumors immediately. Why? You've told people that this is not a good thing, and therefore they will go someplace else. If engagement is not that hard. Look, I do what I call the 3 A's. Real simple. It's attraction, attention, appreciation.
Yeah.
Attraction is all about energy. If you are a leader, you are transferring energy all the time. So you better be very much aware that under that spotlight, that's what you need to look like. You need to look like you're engaged and you're energetic and you're positive. And you give that energy out. And by the way, as a leader, we take stress off of people if we do that.
Yeah.
So how about that? If you want to de-stress people, make sure that you're part of that de-stressing process. Unfortunately, most leaders think that they're alone, and I think they are lonely, but that's because they choose not to engage.
Right.
Why? Oh my God, someone might think I'm vulnerable. We use those words, authentic and vulnerable, but do we mean them? If you mean them, it comes across and it creates a relationship. That's attraction. The concept of attention is absolutely what we've been talking about. I'm going to pay attention to your needs.
Right.
You're going to tell me what they are because I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to be an empathetic listener.
Yeah.
And once I understand,
People always tell me, they say you're so energetic, you have so much energy. And I just think to myself, I just hope I have enough that it's contagious and rubs off on other people. And that's what matters to me, right? I mean, I am energetic. I'm super excited every day to do what I do. And, and I love it. And it does, like it shows, right? You can see it whether I'm on a call, you can hear it on a call, you can see it when I'm in person. And I think that that's something a leader has to have, especially today. If not, they're not in the right capacity. And they need to hire somebody that can have that type of energy.
That right there is the essential truth. Yeah. If you're not willing to do this, you're not the right person for the job.
Right, which is okay, but they have to find the right person. Yeah.
I mean, I like I said, we need lawyers who do wills and trusts.
Yeah, that's right.
If someone
they don't have to have that energy as a trial.
That's right. If someone said I have to do wills and trust, I would have cut my throat with a rusty spoon.
Me too. I totally
agree. Happen. Why? I knew what I was going to be good at because it appealed to me. Leaders have to do this. Then the attention. I will pay attention. I will meet your needs. Tell me what they are. And then the appreciation. Oh my God. Let's say thank you. Let's show gratitude. All of the 3 A's is all you need, if you do them well, to have an engaged workforce. Not only that, an engaged personal relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about engagement. What about storytelling? How can that help? I mean, I tell my team stories all the time, stories about projects, about the good, the bad, but I also tell them stories to help them really learn about the business. I tell client stories all the time. I mean, what are your thoughts in regard to that?
Another essential skill set of a leader is be a storyteller, a persuasive storyteller. My job as a trial attorney was to take the journey on a hero's journey. Take the jury with me on a hero's journey. And it was my job to turn my client, the recovering scoundrel, into the hero. And he met adversity, and they became a part of that story. When I look at a workforce, they need to know the story. And by the way, the story has adversity. Otherwise, Little Red Riding Hood is just a walk in the woods without the wolf. You've got to have the wolf. So guess what? Let's not run away from that. It's amazing. We talk about failure. Do not run away from failure. Embrace it. It's half your life. If you look at your life, you've got yin and yang. We've got success. We've got failure. We need to embrace it. The French actually have words for that. It's gosh, now I immediately drew a blank. And regardless, it's a saying that they have that says, embrace failure. You learn from it, you grow from it. But by the way, that shows that we're vulnerable and authentic, isn't it? And, and we take our team with us on the journey. We let them know why they're important to the journey, to the success of the organization. And yes, we tell them stories. We tell them founder stories.
Yeah.
I have a client that's going to hit their 100th year in business, fourth generation. This is a huge hero journey. Right. Do 4 generations, oh my God, and make every one of the 2,000 employees a part of that journey today. That's huge. Yeah. So yes, if you don't know how to tell a story, take a class.
So true.
I mean, seriously, you've got stories. Figure out that telling them is a part of your job. By the way,
I think some of my teams heard my stories so many times they might fall asleep.
I would disagree with that.
Yeah,
it's amazing to me that if it's a good story, an interesting story, we will listen to it over and over again. Because leaders tell me that. I've already said that to them. Seriously, is it a good story? If it's not a good story, stop telling it. If it is a good story, it's okay to repeat it. Can you change it up a little bit? Yes, but then to bring them into it, you know, and the emotional storytelling is huge and persuasive. I also tell all of my leaders they're required to take improv classes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, it is. And obviously during the pandemic, not so much. They're back now.
Right.
Improv is huge as far as learning to do something we don't do well. I'm a terrible improv. My wife, on the other hand, was wonderful at it. We did as a husband and wife. Why? She is a natural giver.
Yeah.
I am not.
Yeah.
Not a natural giver. But improv requires that you get better at giving because you hand off to someone in the process.
Right.
So improv is huge, but back and storytelling absolutely essential.
Yeah. And what are, and not to switch this to negative, but everybody faces problems. What are some of the problems leaders really overlook the most?
Well, the leadership to me falls into about three different categories. The first one is they're totally unaware.
Yeah.
So you have to become aware of who you are and how you do what you do and the impact it has. You see, we figure out, well, this is what I do. We often don't see the impact.
Yeah.
We need the feedback so that we can adjust how we do what we do, our behavior. The second group, small but still there, I'm aware, but I don't care.
Hmm. Well, that's disaster.
Exactly.
I'm okay to be aware of my, like you said, the blind spots, and I'm aware of where I'm not great, but I work hard to try to improve those areas, like listening, probably similar to you. That's one where I struggle. I have to force myself to shut my mouth and really, really listen. So I'm aware of it, and I do. I actually sometimes I'll even do a countdown to force myself to let them continue and really embrace what somebody else is saying. So yeah, makes sense.
Well, and the third thing is leadership is constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't believe that, you need to look at pre-pandemic and post-pandemic and say, will that style of leadership
Still work
now? And
Yeah.
the answer is no.
No.
I'm sorry. If you think it's going to go back to pre-pandemic normal, you're crazy. People have got a taste of autonomy, flexibility, freedom.
Right.
And they're not going to kill that willingly.
Yeah, they've embraced it for sure.
Absolutely. So guess what? Evolution requires learning.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to adapt. Leaders are unfortunately often success is the worst teacher.
Right, because you feel like you can just replicate it, right, for free.
Of course. Well, I'm successful. By the way, that's why a lot of leaders will not do work with me, because I tell them, no, just because you're successful was in the moment. There's a new moment here.
Yeah.
You need to do something. And clearly you need to do something to get better. It is evolving. And if you're done evolving, you need to step aside, because the rest of the world is evolving.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I point out, unfortunately, the higher up the ladder you go, the less you want to be engaged. You are less sympathetic. You are less empathetic the higher up. First, there's so many layers. The normal large organization has at least 6 layers between the front line and the CEO.
Right.
If you don't do something to penetrate those 6 layers, you don't know what's going on at the front line. One of the things that I love doing with leaders who have 3-shift operations is to ask them when was the last time they were on the 3rd shift.
Yeah, they only show up for the first.
Well, of course, and you get that deer in the headlight look, like, oh my God, and of course now I'm very sarcastic about this. I go, so they don't work for your company, right?
Exactly.
And they're like, what do you mean? Well, they're orphans. We call them orphans.
Yeah.
And they're completely oblivious to as to what they do. How about you actually go there? And I get a commitment from them to get up at midnight and
go into that shift
unannounced for the lunch break, and go in and sit down in the employee cafeteria and wait, because they will first call the police. They have no idea who you are. They think you're an intruder. They don't recognize your face. So guess what? Don't think they're going to embrace you warmly. You need to do this 3 times. The 3rd time, they'll start telling you the truth about the 3rd shift. But if you're not there providing psychological safety and saying, I'm here to hear what you have to say so that I can do something about making your life better, you hear nothing.
Yeah,
However, you got to be willing to put in the effort.
for sure. Do you have any advice for other business leaders as they evolve in a post-pandemic world?
I think that you need to recognize that I've got 5 things that I believe are going to happen going forward. The first is artificial intelligence and autonomy.
Yep.
It's going to take away 70% of the duties that are currently performed by managers. That means a completely redefinition of the job. Not the job description, but the actual job. And with that, we should be back to helping people. We should be developing people. So that's the first trend that I tell everyone they need to be aware of. The second trend is that self-directed and autonomous teams are going to happen.
Yeah.
Employees found out they can do the job pretty well without the manager, right? If you're remote,
managers, yeah,
exactly. So you want to accept the fact that start to train your people to fill those roles of self-directed autonomous teams. They matter. They're going to be a part of the deal. Obviously, and I also believe that managers need to be retrained.
Yeah.
The way I look at this is a weird combo of a self-directed team. Several of them need subject matter experts. They don't need managers. No one wants to be managed. What are the subject manager experts? They need coaches. They need mentors. They need mediators. They need facilitators. They need trainers. When that team needs one of those, they get in touch with the home office and they send out a subject matter expert that's actually trained for that particular item.
Yeah.
To expect a manager to have all of those skill sets is absolutely ridiculous. It's not possible.
Oh my God, so true.
Yeah, so let's accept the fact we're going to change how we do this, provide the teams with what they need to succeed, but do it through subject matter experts. The fourth one is, how about we connect engagement to compensation? Leader compensation needs to be connected to employee engagement. If you say that that's what matters to you, then how about if you make it so important that if you don't have it, there's a penalty for it?
Right.
And it has to be sustainable, right? Yeah. One quarter ain't going to cut it. And so we won't do that. We're not making the people who are responsible for employee engagement, leaders and frontline managers, responsible. We're not doing enough to focus them. And the final thing is, it's time to treat employees as stakeholders.
Yeah.
There's a battle right now about what's the purpose of the corporation. And of course, the traditional viewpoint is it's for shareholder purpose only.
Of course. And everybody else doesn't matter.
And of course not. Well, let me tell you that if you want the shareholder to benefit from increased in stock prices, you better make sure that your employees feel like they're part of the process and not replaceable. So sustainable, engaged employees come from them being treated like a partner in the enterprise. So stakeholder employees is where an organization had better be focused.
Yeah, very, very true. Well, our goal with Evolve is to help leaders to learn, connect, and grow. And I truly cannot thank you enough for spending your time today. And the insight you've provided is incredible. I'm excited to share this episode with everybody. And thank you. Thank you again for being here with us, Paul.
Well, Kim, obviously, I've enjoyed it immensely. You've given me an opportunity, and the exchange of energy and your questions have been spot on. So I truly appreciate the opportunity to converse with you and also with your audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I look forward to future conversations.